Hi there, Nancy and Tim at our home in St. John's, where we've been holed up in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And we thought we'd reach out to the whole Tuckamore community, our guest artists, our young composers, our great volunteers, fellow faculty, and of course our wonderful audience members, just to check in to see how you're doing and how you're coping with these really difficult and uncertain times.
We thought we'd also try to create some videos that address issues that might be of interest to young chamber musicians. And we thought this first one could focus on how to best prepare when you can't actually get together and play the piece as an ensemble. Maybe we'll go through very quickly the basics of just preparing at a normal level that one would do in normal times, and then at the end of the video we'll talk about how you can be extra prepared for that first rehearsal after being separated for so long.
For the pianist, rule number one is
learn the notes.
Learning your notes. I can't think of one great piece of chamber music that isn't challenging to the pianist, and you've got to get all your notes in the right order at the right time, those tricky rhythms, and put both your hands together and get your pedals working, and it's always a challenge. Spend the time and do it properly and do it thoroughly.
And for string players, we have the additional issue of playing all our notes in the right time, but in tune. So that keeps us pretty occupied as well. So another thing we have to consider when we are first learning our piece, our part in the chamber music score, is fingerings. So we want to make sure that we're using fingerings that are stylistic. We wouldn't use the same kind of fingerings if we were learning a piece by Brahms as we would if we were learning a piece by Bach. And not only do they have to be stylistic, but they have to be practical so that in the heat of the moment in performance, they're actually going to work.
That's true, and pianists have the same issue. Be sure you write them in, so in 5 years when you come back to the piece, a lot of the work is already done, by you in the first place. Figure out or translate what the composer's instructions are in the score, whether it's in German or French or Italian.
In the old days, for us, that meant like trundling down to the library to look them up, and now we just go zing and zoop and whatever. So there's no excuse for not knowing what the words mean in the score.
So something that's often challenging for the pianist, especially in movements that are quick, is bringing your part up to tempo. And there, the only real solution is using a metronome. And I have a couple of wonderful examples here. So this is a little Minnie Mouse version. It's nice because it's you can take it pretty much anywhere you go. And our son used this religiously when he was practicing the cello, which is why I found it under the fridge. Then we have a chord. Now this is a nice metronome because you're able to really do the subdivisions, and so if you're a violist and listening to this, don't panic. But if you really want something that's going to do the job, you're going to want to buy yourself one of these. Now this thing might look like an old box, but it's actually a sophisticated machine, much like a jet plane. You can see it even has a navigation light. It really does everything. Slices, dices, julienne fries, and this is what I rely on to get the job done.
So as you're preparing your basic preparation level for that first rehearsal, you obviously want to be listening to recordings, not just that piece, but other pieces written by that composer. So you're kind of immersed in their language. Very often people just listen to the first thing that comes up on YouTube, and that's not a great idea. You want to listen to a variety of recordings, some live performances, some old recordings. Don't be a cheapskate. Like, just go on iTunes and buy a really nice recording. So now we're moving on to categories of preparation that go beyond what was maybe expected. These are tips to help us be uber prepared. One is for string players, writing in lots of cues so that you're not just sitting there counting rests, that you actually know what exactly is being played when you're not playing, what all the moving parts are doing. So what are the subdivisions going on underneath you? And you can be writing all of this in your score. Listening with the full score in hand as you're following along on YouTube or on your newly purchased recording. Also, having your full score in hand and actually playing the parts, playing the viola part on your violin or the cello line on your violin.
Well, for the pianist, it's all about getting ready for that first rehearsal. That's really critical because it's only after the first rehearsal that you'll start to feel comfortable with everything going on around you. I think the pianist needs to be super aware of everything, of all the parts, so he can react spontaneously to all the what was that?
I'm going to share a story now that sort of shows how super prepared you could be if you wanted to be. So this is about the Polish Quartet. When I was at NEC, one of my coaches was Eugene Lehner, the wonderful violist in that quartet. And the Polish Quartet performed all their pieces by memory, all the great chamber works by memory. So Mr. Lehner told me that in the midst of a performance, he had a viola solo coming up, and he suddenly had a memory slip. He couldn't remember how it started. He's starting to panic. And the second violinist has started playing his solo for him. And exactly when it had to come in, there it is, being played beautifully by the violinist. And after the concert, Eugene Lehner asked the violinist, "How did you know I was not going to be coming in there?" And he says, "Well, you weren't in third position where you normally are, right before that."
But I don't know what you're saying. You mean I have to learn the violin now and be able to come in when you have a memory slip?